evening. Thank you for having me today. So I'm Giles and I'm a chartered architect working in West London, and I thought I'd start by just telling you a bit about myself. So I grew up in South London and I studied architecture at Plymouth and Liverpool and University College London in Euston. I qualified as an architect in 2010, and I've worked in architect practices in Devon in South West England. I've worked in Madrid in practice, more recently in North London in Tufnell Park, and now I'm working in West London. And I've worked on many types of projects, but the main thing I was working on before is schools a lot like this one, actually, new build academies. Now I am designing and building a block of flats in West London, so I'm running the site works and designing it at the same time. And 2 years ago I worked on a humanitarian project in Cambodia. I went out there and worked with some local communities, building some washing facilities for some small villages on small islands. So architecture, what is it? It's known as the mother of the arts. It's a combination of arts and science. It's to do with the design and construction of buildings, which I'm sure a lot of you will know. And there's many stages to how a project will come from inception to completion. So it always starts with the clients. They will have a site, they will have a budget, and they will have an idea of what they want to do. Then an architect will give them a few proposals, feasibility studies. They will come up with a few design sketches. I brought a few sheets here today just to give you an idea. So once you've figured out with the client what it is exactly you're trying to design, you'll come up with some sketch proposals like this. So we will do some artist impressions. I'm just going to pass them around. If you can pass them around to the back, if that's all right, just have a quick look. Then in the modern day architecture we work a lot with computers as well. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the programs. It looks a lot more complicated than it is, but learning how to do stuff like this is quite straightforward. This is just a 3D render done on a computer with SketchUp and Photoshop. So we'll produce some of these as well. And then we'll move on to design floor plans, which is just the general layout of the building. So we'll do this at each level of the floor. Pass this around as well. Thank you. I don't know if any of you are interested in it, but a big part of it as well is model making. So we'll make models out of all sorts of materials. If you have workshops in the school as well. Yeah. And then we'll look at doing some construction detailed drawings of how the building is put together, the different elements and materials used. There you are. And then the project goes on site, so we look at construction. So we have different stages of construction, from building the frame up to the claddings going on, the services, the lighting going inside, all the different components. There you are. And then we have this is one project I completed a few years ago. It's a visitor centre in Essex. It's in a nature park, so it's an education centre for people to go and learn about wildlife. There you are. So that's just an idea of architecture and an architect and what they will be doing. So the qualifications, generally for A-levels, if you're starting to look at A-levels, you'll be looking at maths, arts, graphic design, physics. These are the most common ones for architecture, but I took a complete tangent. The only relevant A-level I did at the time was graphic design, but fortunately I was able to get onto a course just because graphic design and art is a real driver for architecture. And then in terms of the course, there's 3 parts of the course. You'll do a bachelor's degree at university, which is 3 years. Then you can work in practice for a year, followed by a master's for 2 years. And then you start going into practice, and that's when you get your qualification. So the skills needed, as some of these are showing: model making, drawing, working well with computers, presentational skills, all a big part of architecture. A typical day, you would be working a lot with other consultants, so it would be lighting designers, structural engineers, civil engineers, all different members of the design team. Why I chose architecture was a very late decision in life. I mean, a lot of people decide when they're younger. A lot of people want to do architecture from sometimes the age of 11 or 12. I was 18 when I made the decision, so I decided very late on, and I've enjoyed it ever since. So some of the best and worst parts about it. So every day is different. As you can imagine, you're always working on different parts of the building. You're always designing something you'll designing is materializing. Some of the worst parts about it, you have to work long hours a lot of the time, not all the time. And of course it's a very long course, as I was mentioning before, it's up to 7 years. But don't be daunted by the length of the course or the price. I mean, fees these days are very expensive, I know, but I came from a family of low income. I wouldn't have been able to go to university if I didn't get support through bursaries and grants, and I managed to get through the course with assistance like that. Working hours, it's very similar to a lot of professions. It's generally 40 hours a week, so you do 8 hours a day, and occasion there's overtime depending on the stage of the project. And the pay could generally be described as medium to high. I think the most recent study showed the average architects in their sort of mid-30s will be earning about £42,000 a year. So that's a sort of average salary for an architect. The progression opportunities, so once you go through university, you become a qualified architect. You go on to be a project architect, so you'll run a design team or a project team of other architects. Then we have associate and partner is the top rank in a practice. And generally, a lot of people who study architecture, even if they do the first degree, they don't go on to become architects. Most of them don't. They go on to become graphic designers, lighting designers, theatre designers, product designers, basically every type of design you can imagine. My oldest friend, he studied architecture and now he has a laser cutting company. So he cuts and makes different materials for different places. So it's a very interesting course and there's a lot of opportunity for what you can do afterwards. And I suppose the final thing about it is really the goal is being creative and imaginative in architecture.
Thank you very much. Boys, we've got room for questions now. Yeah. Grab your hands up. What's you?
At what age did you know that you wanted to be an architect?
It was 18, but it was...
Relax, man.
It's fine. I thought I wanted to study economics, and I accepted a course. I accepted a university place to do economics. I was on my year out between A-level and doing that. I was working teaching at the time, and I decided that this was not the right decision. So I made a very late change to get onto a course, and it was at 18. Yeah.
Do you have to do graphic design A-level in order to do an architecture degree?
No, that's one of the good thing with architecture is there's recommended A-levels, but I think still there's not compulsory ones. So I had studied graphic design, but I didn't study art. So if you were studying art, then that's a big help. It would be useful if you were interested in going into it to have either art or graphic design or both.
So what if you didn't have any?
If you didn't have any, then there's other types of DT, if I'm not mistaken, there's resistant material. Which ones are resistant materials? Which is probably actually more relevant than graphic design because it brings in the science side of things, the materials.
My career advisor gave me bad advice when I was 18 because I did graphics and art GCSE and I wanted to be an architect. And I went to college. I couldn't get into the graphic design class, so I did maths, chemistry, and sociology, and Spanish.
Yes.
And then I just thought I can't be an architect anymore, so I'm a mathematician.
Right, well, I wouldn't say it's too late, but I studied graphic design, biology, economics, and English. So in a similar stance, they might not seem as relevant. I think it's about your experience as well outside of the course. So where you might have had work experience, if you might be doing extracurricular activity, art courses, they're all relevant.
Any more questions? Ola?
So you said resistant materials is more relevant than product and graphic design. So does that mean that is graphic design and product design basically all put in one for resistant materials?
I think it's useful to have one of them. There, people who are on my course, some of them had studied graphic design, some resistant materials, some both. So altogether, if you're choosing one of them, then you're in a strong position to go forward with it.
Ricardo?
could you get into a course without product design and graphic?
Yeah, so art. Are you interested in art?
No, could you get onto an architect course without any of them?
Without any of them?
Or
I wouldn't actually know, to be honest with you. I think they are very relevant, so doing art or graphic design is acceptable. But these days, I mean, there's a lot of types of GCSEs. As far as I'm aware, there's a lot more new GCSEs these days. So if one is creative, then that's the key really as well. And at the same time, as I said, architecture is art and a science. So if you're more science-based, if you're interested in physics and maths, then that's a very strong side of it as well. I didn't do physics and maths, I was on the other side of it. So.
Any more? I've got a question actually.
Yes.
But then we'll go to Charlotte. What's your favourite stage? You talked about all the different stages.
It's the concept design. It's I don't know where all the sheets have gone, but it's this early stage here really. So your client has told you where they want to build it, what they want to build it, and how much for, and you give them the initial design. This will be part of the planning application as well. And the struggle and key to architecture is keeping your concept design through to the end. Because you're always faced with problems. There's always budget cuts. So this project almost got cancelled completely because there were troubles with financing and everything else, and it's just keeping the core idea really.